What up, chat? It's your boy, Coach Irvin. You know, we back in the lab doing this math thing. But before we begin, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. All right, let's get to it. All right, so remember, first things first, we're going to talk about domain, review over domain and range. So remember, domain are your X values, range are your Y values. If we have a open circle, remember it's just a less than sign. If we have a closed circle, that's going to be less than or equal to. Next, let's review over finding domain and range. All right, so over here on the left-hand side, let's go ahead and find the ordered pairs for each point. So for this ordered pair, it's going to be -9, 3. There's my X and Y. Then over here, we have this one is 2, 6, 2, -6. And that's my X and Y. Remember, my X-axis is here, my Y-axis is up here as well. Since I have 2 points, okay, remember we're going to end up having 2 numbers and 2 signs. All right, so we're going to start with our lowest X. For domain, we're going to start with our lowest X. So our lowest X is -9, and it's an open circle on -9, so it's just going to be a less than sign. X is in the middle. Over here, our highest X is +2, and it's a closed circle, so that's going to be less than or equal to +2. Same thing for our range. For our Y, we're going to start with the lowest Y is -6. It's a closed circle on -6, so it's less than or equal to Y. And then our highest Y is +3 with the open circle, so that's just less than 3. On this one, you'll notice we only have one endpoint, so in our answer, we're going to end up having one number and one sign. All right, so let's find the ordered pair for that one. For this one, it's going to be -4, 6. That's my X and Y. So for my domain, we're going to use -4. So it's going to be X is, I have to pay attention to which way the arrow is going. Is it going to the left or to the right? You'll notice this arrow is going to the right. So it's X is greater than or equal to -4. So it's a closed circle on -4 going to the right. So that would be greater than or equal to. Same thing for my range. Okay, start up here. My Y is 6. Okay, I just have to figure out which way my arrow is going. My arrow is going, is it going up or down? And it's going down in this case. So my arrow is going down, so that's less than or equal to +6. So next here, we're doing the same thing. We have 2 endpoints here. All right, so let's start with our domain. We're going to end up having 2 numbers. Let's find our ordered pair. Our ordered pair is -2, 2. So that's for my X and Y. And over here is going to be +3, 12. And that's my X and Y. So now for our domain, we're going to use our X's. All right, so the X is the lowest X out of these 2 is -2. So I'll start with -2. And it's a closed circle on -2. So that's going to be less than or equal to X. And then my highest X is +3 with the open circle, so it's just going to be less than 3. Next, for my range, we start with the lowest Y. So out of 12 and 2, 2 is my lowest Y, and it's a closed circle on +2 down here. So it's going to be less than or equal to Y. And then our highest Y is 12 with the open circle, so that's going to just be less than 12. Example 5, we have one endpoint, so we should have one sign and one number. So let's start with our ordered pair. This is -3, 3. So for our X, for the domain, it's at a -3. And I have to ask myself, does the arrow go to the left or to the right? And this arrow is going to the right. So that would be X is greater than or equal to -3, since it's going to the right. Next, for my range, I have to ask myself, is my arrow going up or down? So I know it's going to be my Y, and it's going to have 3. I just got to figure out my sign. So if I look at my range, the Y, the arrow is going up. So it's going to be greater than or equal to +3. So let's talk about graphs of exponential functions. First of all, the A represents my y-intercept. That's where the graph will cross the y-axis. The B represents my growth or decay factor. All right. If it's greater than 1, then that means it's going to be growth. If the B is between 0 and 1 or pretty much less than 1, then it's going to be decay. Also, another way you can tell is if the graph increases from left to right, which means it's going up from left to right, then it is growth. If the graph is going down from left to right, then you'll know that it is decay. The last thing I want to go over is asymptote. Asymptote is going to be a line that the graph approaches and gets closer to, but never reaches, touches or crosses. For exponential functions, it will always be the horizontal line. So the first thing we're looking at is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. Here's the y-axis right here, and the graph crosses the y-axis at 16. You'll notice this first number is 16 as well. That's going to be my y-intercept. So what I'm going to write for my y-intercept is 0,16. The multiplier will pretty much be your growth or decay factor. So in this case, my multiplier is the b, which is the number inside the parentheses. So my multiplier ends up being 1/2. You ask yourself, is it growth or decay? If you'll notice, the line is going from left to right. The line is going down. Therefore, I know that it is decay. I can also look at these numbers over here and tell that the numbers are going down as well. So that tells me that it's decay. Increase or decrease, again, that the arrow's going down or the line's going down, so it's a decrease. The asymptote will always be y equals 0. The asymptote will always be y equals 0, no matter what. It's this line right here, because if I were to type in y equals 0, it's always going to be this x-axis. Domain, that's kind of what we talked about last time. In this case, domain going from left to right, an arrow keeps going to the left, and the arrow keeps going to the right. So my domain, in this case, is going to be all real numbers. Our range, you'll notice from bottom to top, at the bottom, it kind of flattens out at the bottom right here. It never crosses this line. And from here, the graph goes up. So it's going to be y is greater than 0. You'll notice that here, number 2, the y-intercept is right here at 6. So it's going to be at 0,6. The multiplier is going to be 1.25. And since this multiplier is greater than 1, then we know it is going to be growth. And since it's growth, I know if I look at the graph, if I were to type the graph into Desmos and look at it, it would be an increase as well. As I said before, our asymptote will always be y equals 0. Remember, it's that horizontal line. Our domain in this case is going to be all real numbers. And then our range, since it's growth, is going to be y is greater than 0. All right, number 3, you'll notice that our a or our y-intercept, there's not a number in front. So remember, there's not a number in front of the parentheses. We put a 1 there. So our y-intercept is 0,1. Our multiplier is 0.5 in this case. Since our multiplier is less than 1, 0.5 is less than 1, that will be a decay. Also, if you type it into Desmos, you'll notice your graph is going down like this, so I know it's decay. Since it's decay, that means it's decreasing. Our asymptote, again, will always be y equals 0. Okay, it will be the x-axis. Our domain, if you look at it, is going to be all real numbers. And since it's in our range, in this case, it's going to be y is greater than 0 because everything is above 0 on the y-axis. I know my y-intercept is 0, -2 in this case. Our multiplier is 4/3. If you type in the graph in Desmos, this is what our graph looks like. So you know that it's going to be decay. And since it is decay, I know our graph is going to decrease. The asymptote will be y equals 0. The domain is going to be all real numbers still. And then you'll notice on this graph, it is below the x-axis, so it's going to be y is less than 0. All right, next, a customer purchased an electronic device for $650. Each year, the value of the electronic device decreases by 30%. So that lets me know that it decreases by 30%, which means it is going to be decay. Which statement is true about the graph that represents the relationship between the value of the device and in dollars Y and the number of years X since the device was purchased. All right, so I know it's decreasing, and the initial value is 6. That's my initial or starting value right here. So my equation would be Y equals, or not Y equals, starts with 650. That would be my Y-intercept. So the answer is A, because that is where it crosses the Y-axis when you type in the graph. All right, go ahead and take a couple of minutes to try to do this problem, see if you can do it on your own. And go ahead and once I finish talking, go ahead and pause the video, and then I'll come back, and then you can come back and see if you got the correct answer. Here are your answers. I hope y'all have a good day. And as always, go Cowboys.